Hi, I'm Mariska, and this year, my mother said the words, "Let's do something smaller." So I said, "Okay." I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just waited. Until I saw the live stream, my entire family, dressed up, candles lit, toasting lemon cake. My daughter's handmade card still sitting in my purse. They didn't forget me. They planned around me. And when I canceled the $12,500 donation they'd counted on, they called me cruel. But tell me, what do you do when your own family writes you out of their story and expects you to still fund the ending? The wind outside whispered through the window seams, that kind of hush that makes you think twice about leaving the house, even for a coffee. Portland winters aren't dramatic, just persistent, like people who smile while they hurt you. That morning, I had just finished my second cup of stale drip when my phone buzzed. It was Mom. "Hey, sweetie," she said, her voice overly sweet. "So we're thinking this year will be low-key, just really quiet, you know?" I knew. "Let's skip you coming just for this time. Zinnia's juggling work, Leland's got a sinus thing again. We thought, maybe keep it smaller. Simplify." There it was. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, more out of reflex than need. "Sure. Smaller. Sounds practical." "You understand," she added, like a punctuation mark. "You've always been understanding." That part, at least, was true. I'd spent most of my adult life being the one who didn't argue. The flexible one. The one who never got the front seat but always made sure everyone had their snacks. "All right," I told her. "Let me know if anything changes." We hung up like it was a dentist reschedule. No drama, just delay. 2 days later, a cream-colored envelope arrived with Thomas Family Dinner embossed in generic gold. No date, no time, no return address. Just a shell of an invitation. Pretty, but hollow. I stared at it, flipping it back and forth, looking for hidden meaning like it was a puzzle. I even rubbed my thumb over the back, wondering if a missing sticker meant something. Maybe they forgot the details. Maybe it was just an oversight. But my gut knew better. A week before that call, I had texted Mom. "Just checking in. Still on for dinner next weekend?" She replied fast. "Might be better if you sat this one out." The words hit like an open-handed slap. Not hard enough to bruise, but enough to sting. I had stared at the message for 20 minutes before closing the screen. Now, it was gone. Deleted. When I asked her casually on our call, she responded like I was making things up. "What text?" she said. "I never said that. You must be confused." Confused. That word again. So I did what every woman who's been quietly erased learns to do. I pulled receipts. I backed up my iCloud, scrolled through my stored messages, and there it was. Her words. Still intact. I didn't text back. Instead, I started wrapping gifts. I pulled out the soft blue pendant I'd bought months earlier. Delicate, understated, with a silver chain. Something she would have loved if it came from someone else. I wrapped it with gold tissue, added a handwritten note, and placed it in a small white box. Noli sat nearby, drawing hearts on printer paper, oblivious to my quiet dread. "Do we still give Grandma the crown I made her?" she asked. The crown was pink, glittered, with Queen G scribbled in crayon. I nodded. "Of course we do." She smiled and kept coloring. The truth is, I had been here before. Not this exact scene, but this exact ache. Being included after the planning, remembered after the list was printed, invited after everyone else had RSVP'd. They always made it sound like life just got in the way. I once believed that. Now I understood better. That night, I settled into my kitchen. The dinner I was skipping would have been tonight. The lights overhead buzzed gently. The casserole in the oven sat untouched. I wasn't hungry. I had poured a glass of red, just to feel like it was a choice. Noli was humming in the background, playing with her dolls, when my phone lit up. "Vera Thomas is live now?" I almost ignored it. Almost. But something in me clicked. Intuition, curiosity, maybe habit. The caption read, "Celebrating love and legacy with the people who matter most." I tapped the screen. There they were. The long table. candlelight. Mom in the center, smiling like she hadn't just rewritten history. Zinnia raising a toast. Leland at the far end, nodding solemnly. The neighbors, Zinnia's work friends. Even an old family acquaintance I hadn't seen in years. No mention of me, no seat set aside, just a long, perfect illusion. And me? Watching from the sidelines again, uninvited to a party thrown in my name. The room was dim, except for the blue light of my phone, casting shadows across the kitchen wall. Noli had fallen quiet, her crayons scattered on the table, while she sipped lukewarm cocoa. My glass of wine sat untouched, the kind of forgettable cab you pour when the night feels heavier than the bottle. The notification popped up again. Vera Thomas is live now. I knew better than to look, but my finger hovered anyway. Curiosity or masochism, I couldn't tell. The caption read, "Celebrating love and legacy with the people who matter most." A twitch behind my ribs. I tapped. The screen loaded instantly. Laughter, soft jazz playing in the background, candlelight dancing off gold-trimmed glasses, a dining table stretched from wall to wall, dressed in silver linens and tall floral centerpieces. At the head of it, my mother sat beaming, in a way she hadn't looked at me in years. Zinnia stood beside her, hair done, makeup perfect, wearing a dress I'd seen before. Not in public, but in my closet. It was the navy vintage piece I'd bought for Mom's 60th, the one she said was too matronly. I remembered skipping groceries that week to afford it. She never wore it, said it wasn't her, but there it was, on Zinnia, who spun in it like it was made for her. A woman behind the camera giggled. "That dress looks so classic on you, Zin," Zinnia laughed. "Thanks, it's Mom's, technically." Technically. I didn't even notice Noli at my side until she asked, "Is that Grandma's house?" My voice caught. "It's an old video," I muttered, but the lie landed flat even to my own ears. The stream continued. Neighbors, co-workers, a retired teacher from my old school, plates full of roast and salad, everyone clinking glasses. Zinnia tapped a fork against her wine glass. "Okay, everyone, a quick toast before dessert." She passed the mic to Mom. Vera stood, calm and poised, like she was delivering a campaign speech. "To family, those who stay close and never make things difficult. You all mean the world to me." Applause, clinking, laughter. I stood completely still. My own hands, once preoccupied with wrapping paper and handwritten notes, now dangled at my sides. I walked slowly to my drawer and pulled it open. Inside, still sealed, was a pale blue envelope marked Foundation Pledge. The check I'd been saving for months, $12,500, meant for a project Mom had talked about for years, a community garden fund in her name. She even asked me to coordinate the donation back in spring. I took the envelope out and stared at it. Back on screen, Vera hugged Zinnia tightly, kissed her forehead, and mouthed something I couldn't hear. Probably something warm, something sweet, something she never saved for me. Zinnia's voice filled the room again. "Thank you for showing up for Mom. Some people say they care, but you all proved it tonight." My stomach tightened. I sat down, phone still in hand, opened the donation portal, found my pledge account. I hovered over the pending contribution section, $12,500. My thumb trembled, but only slightly. Then I clicked, cancel donation. The room went quiet, not outside, just within me. That kind of quiet that only comes after noise that's lasted too long. Noli turned toward me. "Mom?" I didn't look at her right away. I kept staring at the confirmation message. "Your transaction has been canceled." Then I turned to her and said it aloud, like I needed to believe it too. We were never meant to sit at that table. I woke up to the pale gray light of winter filtering through the blinds. Portland always felt damp in January, like the air itself was heavy with secrets. My body was still, but my thoughts sprinted ahead, tumbling through fragments of that live stream like broken glass. No calls, no texts. My phone sat on the nightstand, quiet and useless. I rolled over and checked the donation portal again, still processing. A single line on the screen stared back at me. Cancellation requested. Noli was already awake, sitting cross-legged on the floor with a book she wasn't reading. She was watching me instead, in that quiet way kids do when they sense something is wrong but don't know how to fix it. "Mom," she finally asked, "are we still giving Grandma her gifts?" I sat up slowly, trying to summon the right words. "We'll figure it out." The words tasted like nothing. In the kitchen, I reheated yesterday's coffee and stared at the screen again. I couldn't get Vera's voice out of my head. To family, those who stay close and never make things difficult. I'd heard her say similar things for years, but this time, with Zinnia standing next to her in that dress, it hit different. That navy dress. I pulled up the live stream again, paused it at the moment Zinnia twirled for the camera. There it was. The hem of the dress fluttered just above her knees, exactly like it did when I first held it up to the mirror months ago, imagining it on my mother. The tag still had the price when I bought it. I remember because I almost didn't. I remember checking the grocery bill afterward, adjusting the budget. I remember thinking, she'll love this. She'll wear it with pride. But she never wore it. "It's not really me," she'd said, folding it up without a second glance. Now it was Zinnia's, and apparently it suited her just fine. I closed the video and opened Facebook. Vera had already posted photos from the evening, her and Zinnia, arms wrapped around each other, flutes of champagne in hand. The caption read, "So grateful for the anonymous donor who made all of this possible." I zoomed in on the photo. On the far end of the floral centerpiece, barely visible, was a small card tucked between the stems. My handwriting, the note I had sent with the flower delivery. They had used it, displayed it, but they didn't say my name. Anonymous. Just like Zinnia had said on the stream. We even got a generous gift from someone who couldn't be here. Someone, not Mariska, not their daughter, not the person who had planned this entire contribution since spring. I deleted the post from my timeline, closed the app, sat still. They wanted what I gave, but not me, and this wasn't new. I thought back to the time Mom asked me to sponsor new books for the library at Dad's old school. I said yes. The ribbon cutting happened without me. Zinnia gave the speech. My name wasn't mentioned then either. I pulled out my journal and wrote slowly, deliberately. They edited me out of the story they tell about love. I didn't cry. At breakfast, Noli placed the paper crown she'd made in front of me. "We can still give it, right? I worked really hard on it." I looked at her, the way her eyes held both hope and caution. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to believe there was still a way back from this. "We'll keep it," I said. "For now. Not everything is over yet." She nodded. "Okay, maybe next time." After she left for school, I walked outside, holding my checkbook. I thought I might shred it, or maybe send it somewhere else. But I didn't. I just stood there, coat unbuttoned, letting the cold remind me I was still here. When I returned, a thick envelope was waiting on the welcome mat. Family Foundation, Inc. It read. I carried it to the kitchen, sat down, and opened it slowly. Inside was a printed form, acknowledgement of a charitable gift. But instead of my name, the line read, Donor Berzerzer032. My routing number was still there. My contribution, stripped of identity, processed under a number. No mention of me, no note of thanks, no recognition, just erased. Except they didn't erase me. They tried to. I held the paper in both hands and whispered low and steady. This isn't erasure. This is theft. 2 days had passed since the live stream. I hadn't heard a word from Vera or Zinnia. Not a call, not a text. The silence wasn't strange. It was strategic. By the second morning, I'd stopped checking my phone. I had a new ritual now. Documents, screenshots, timestamps. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open and a pile of papers beside me, highlighting sections of the donation receipt where my routing number remained intact, but my name had been erased. Noli wandered in, still in her pajama pants and oversized hoodie, holding a half-eaten apple. What are you doing? She asked, peeking over my shoulder. Making notes, I said, underlining another line with a red pen. So no one can pretend later that they didn't know. She climbed onto the bench across from me, quiet for a moment before asking, Are you going to tell them? I looked up. Her eyes weren't accusing, just curious. "I'm going to show them," I said. She nodded slowly, then reached for her sketchpad. I watched her draw as I opened the folder I'd started, Family Foundation, Disputed Materials. Inside were screenshots from the live stream, one freeze frame at the moment Vera raised her glass with Zinnia smiling at her side. Another of the Instagram stories Zinnia posted the night before, white text over a pastel background. "Thank you to donor Nambrzo32 for making this possible. Some give quietly, others just talk loud." I stared at that one the longest. Noli had gone back to coloring, humming quietly while I opened the donation platform. Contribution cancelled was now stamped across the top of the page in gray. A tidy transaction wiped from their records but not mine. I remembered sitting in a church basement when I was 15, making posters for the school fundraiser. Vera hadn't come, said she was swamped. Zinnia had showed up for 5 minutes, took photos, left. No one had thanked me then either. Back then, it stung. Now, it sharpened. I opened a new email draft. Subject line, request for immediate removal. Body, to whom it may concern, please remove all public association of my name, financial details, or any reference to my contributions from all platforms, documents, and materials related to the Family Foundation. This request includes, but is not limited to, website listings, event programs, recorded statements, and any digital or physical promotional assets. Failure to comply will be met with formal legal review. Regards, Mariska Thomas. I copied Vera. I copied Zinnia. I copied the accountant whose name I'd found in the tiny footer of the Foundation's About page. No pleasantries, no emotion, just precision. I hit send. Then I whispered aloud, not for anyone but myself. When they choose not to hear you, you write it in permanent ink. The rest of the day moved slowly. I folded laundry, took Noli to the library, returned emails from my nonprofit board. I kept it normal, functional, like the ground hadn't just shifted beneath me, because the truth was, I wasn't falling anymore. I was learning how to stand on it. Later that evening, while Noli read on the couch, my phone buzzed. Zinnia. "Did you really have to go that far?" Her message read. "You could have just called." I stared at the screen. Called? After a staged dinner, a live stream, a fake donor label? Before I could decide whether to respond, another message came through. "Mom says you're being dramatic. You always do this." Ah, there it was. I locked the phone, tossed it on the counter, and said softly to the empty kitchen, "I'm done explaining myself." By the 5th day, something inside me had gone still. Not numb, not broken, just precise. There's a clarity that only arrives when you finally stop trying to be understood. That morning, I opened my laptop, not out of habit, but with purpose. I logged into every account even remotely tied to the family. Unfollowed the Foundation's page, left the Facebook group Zinnia had created. Unsubscribed from the family mailing list Vera still used for holiday updates no one asked for. Then I went further. I pulled up my estate planning file and made the edits I should have made years ago. I removed Vera as my emergency contact. Took Zinnia off the healthcare proxy. They had already chosen not to show up for me. Why should they be the ones to decide how I'm treated if I can't speak for myself? I paused only once. At the section labeled Next of Kin, I typed in Noli's name, then I changed the locks, literally, called a locksmith, paid the rush fee. Watched him replace the old set, then held the cool new keys in my palm like they weighed something heavier than brass. Cutting ties isn't always loud, I whispered to myself. Sometimes, it's a quiet signature on a dotted line. That afternoon, an email popped into my inbox from Clara, a former coworker, now working with a compliance firm. "Hey, thought you should see this," she wrote, followed by a link. It was a public registration notice. The Family Foundation, my family's vanity project, had filed a document listing me as a co-founder. My name, my credentials, even my old resume, down to the formatting I'd once helped Zinnia fix just for practice. And then I saw it, a scanned signature. Mine. Except it wasn't. It was close. Close enough to fool someone not paying attention, but I remembered the exact curve in my M, the way I cross my T's deliberately. This version rushed the finish. I scrolled further. The bank details, mine, the EIN application, under my tax ID. They'd used me like scaffolding, invisible until they needed the support. I closed my browser and stood up slowly, pacing the living room, my fists curled into themselves. A memory flashed. Vera at my high school graduation, telling the principal she'd had to push me every step of the way. Me, too stunned to argue. Zinnia smiling beside her, saying nothing. This time I wasn't too stunned. I was wide awake. The next morning, a church newsletter slid into my inbox. It was from the same community group Vera had donated to for decades. Page 2 featured an ad for the Foundation's upcoming gala. There, in bold font, Mariska Thomas, silent partner founding patron silent. That word again. They'd finally found a use for my silence, turned it into brand equity. When someone uses your silence as permission, I murmured, it's time to speak louder than their lies. I spent that afternoon crafting an email. It wasn't long, no fluff, no emotion. Subject, cease and desist, unauthorized use of name identity. To whom it may concern, effective immediately, you are instructed to remove all reference to Mariska Thomas from any and all materials related to the Family Foundation. This includes digital, printed, and verbal communications. Failure to comply will initiate legal action. Consider this your formal and final notice. I blind copied Ava, my attorney friend. I'd met her through a nonprofit conference last year. She knew how to make things stick. I hit send. That evening, as I was folding laundry, my phone buzzed. A group text from the family thread we hadn't used in 6 months. Vera, we're having dinner Sunday, just us. You should come. Let's talk. Zinnia, don't do anything we'll all regret. I stared at the screen, unmoved. Then I walked to the printer, hit print, and filed the conversation in the same folder that now held my donation receipts, the forged registration, and the flyer from the newsletter. I wasn't planning to regret anything, but I was ready to make them wish they'd never underestimated me. By Sunday evening, my nerves had gone from sharp to steel. I left Noli with Jess, our neighbor who knew enough not to ask why I needed a few hours. I told her, if I'm not back by 9, just keep her overnight. Jess nodded, then added softly, you sure you want to go? I didn't answer. I just nodded once and walked away. I pulled into the driveway a few minutes past 6. Vera's house looked like it always did, calm, composed, never a curtain out of place. But the moment I opened the door, I knew. The smell hit first. Garlic, thyme, something slow-roasted and expensive. Definitely not a potluck. This was catered. The table had silver chargers and place cards. A photographer lingered by the piano, pretending to fiddle with his camera. This wasn't dinner. This was a PR stunt. Vera came out from the kitchen wearing pearls and a matching smirk. Mariska, sweetheart, I'm so glad you came. Zinnia stood up from the dining table, that ever-polished look pasted on. We thought it'd be nice to just talk, the three of us. I didn't take off my coat. Where's Dad? Running late, Vera said too quickly. He'll be here soon. I didn't believe her. My chair was already pulled out for me, like I'd RSVP'd for a staged apology. I stayed standing. I knew what this was the moment I smelled catering, I said. Vera's smile tightened. Let's not make this hostile. We wanted transparency. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a thick envelope, slid it across the table. Here's everything. The foundation paperwork, where your name appears. We want to make sure you feel respected in this. I opened the packet slowly, deliberately. Inside was a file labeled Co-Founder Agreement. The signature on the bottom was mine, at least someone's version of it. Too clean, too smooth. They always got the curve of my R wrong. And this is supposed to make me feel respected? I asked. Zinnia leaned in. You've been involved, Mariska, informally. This just makes it official. Everyone already thinks you're behind it. I looked at Vera. So your idea of fixing this is forging my name and filing me into a crime? We didn't commit a crime, Vera snapped. You're blowing this out of proportion. I pulled a second envelope from my bag. This came from my bank. Zinnia's eyebrows twitched. It's an internal audit notice, I said. Your foundation has been rerouting donations using my routing number. That's not just unethical, it's fraud. Vera's face was unreadable. Zinnia turned pale, the kind of pale that makes makeup look like a mask sliding off. I froze the account, I added. Any future transaction gets flagged, retroactively. Zinnia's voice cracked first. You knew how important this was to Mom. Why would you humiliate us like this? I turned to her. I didn't humiliate you. I exposed what you built on a lie. The room went silent, the way it only does when everyone's waiting for the older woman at the table to lash out. But Vera didn't. She just stood still, gripping the edge of the counter like it might keep her upright. I picked up my bag. Leland walked in just then, coat half-buttoned, pretending he wasn't late on purpose. You're really going to do this to your mother? He asked, not even looking at me. I stopped at the door. She already did it to me. And I walked out. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. But the cold air outside felt better than any warmth that house had offered in years. When I got home, Noli was asleep on Jess's couch. I tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and sat down with my laptop. There it was, an unread message in my inbox. Subject: Notice of Internal Audit, Foundation Review. It was from the City Grants Compliance Office. I smiled. It started with a post. Of course it did. Vera never confronted problems directly. She curated them. The Facebook status appeared late one afternoon, right when most of our church circle and extended relatives would be settling in with their phones. It was long, dramatic, and full of the kind of performative grief she reserved for when people started asking too many questions. She's chosen distance over grace, it began. I never wanted to lose my daughter, but some people rewrite family for their own gain. No name, no tag. But I didn't need either, neither did anyone else. Within an hour, the comments piled up. Old neighbors wrote things like, "You did your best, Vera." Some distant aunt added, "The ungrateful ones always rewrite history." A few people offered vague platitudes, "Families are hard," but mostly, it was a sympathy parade. I read every word. Not because I needed validation, but because I wanted to see how far she'd go. Zinnia didn't stay silent either. She posted a video on her new podcast, her face filtered to perfection, voice soft, every word dripping with rehearsed hurt. It's hard, she said, when people who were supposed to have your back twist the truth just because they don't get their way. Not everything is a vendetta. Sometimes you just have to protect your peace, even if it means cutting out toxicity, even when it's blood. I paused the clip, my jaw clenched so tight it clicked. Protect your peace. They weren't defending themselves. They were rewriting the script, live, with an audience. I didn't respond. I didn't post. I didn't even breathe heavy. Instead, I opened a blank folder on my laptop and named it Redemption File. Then, the universe threw me something unexpected. An anonymous email hit my inbox. No subject, no signature. Just a single line and an attachment. Figured you should see this. The attachment was a PDF, scanned copies of expense reports, internal emails, and a memo labeled Family Foundation Expense, Z. Thomas, Debt Consolidation. I opened it, hands steady. There it was in black and white. Zinnia had used foundation funds to pay off her personal credit card debt. Several $1,000s routed quietly through discretionary marketing lines. It was over. Not legally, not publicly, yet. But in that moment, I stopped doubting my gut. Stopped wondering if maybe I'd overreacted. Stopped asking if maybe this was just miscommunication. They had committed theft in my name. And worse, they'd spun it as betrayal when I finally said no. I saved every file to the folder, labeled, dated, tagged. Then I called Ava. "You ready to actually go to war?" I asked. She didn't hesitate. "Absolutely." The next few days were quiet, but the kind that hums with pressure. I kept Noli off social media, stayed busy. I didn't chase sympathy, didn't leak anything. I waited, because I knew what was coming. Late Friday night, a text came through. Unknown number, but I didn't need to guess. "Your mom's heart can't take this stress. Walk it back while you can." I stared at it for a long moment before typing back. You should have worried about her heart before you used mine to raise donations. I hit send. And just like that, the PR war had started. They built a house of mirrors. I was about to smash the first pane. The call came on a rainy Thursday evening. I was halfway through dinner prep, slicing red onions for a salad, still wearing my work cardigan when the phone rang. Inez. Mariska, she said, her voice calm but purposeful. I've got something. Can you meet me tonight? I wiped my hands on a dish towel. I don't want to speak. I want the paperwork to do that. We met at a coffee shop off Belmont, the kind that still plays jazz on vinyl and serves drinks in ceramic cups. Inez already had her laptop open when I arrived. I handed her a folder, thick, tabbed, methodically organized, emails, bank statements, scanned receipts, screenshots from the podcast, tax forms, and that flyer with my name printed like a ghost endorsement. I don't need my name cleared, I told her. I need it reclaimed. She nodded once. This won't take long. The article dropped less than 48 hours later. The Foundation That Forgets Its Founder, by Inez Calderon. The headline alone was enough to split the city's nonprofit circle in half. She laid it all out: the forged signature, the rerouted donations, the debt payments disguised as foundation expenses. She included side-by-side screenshots, Zinnia waxing poetic about integrity and leadership on her podcast, and, right below it, a redacted memo showing funds funneled to her personal card. My name wasn't in the quotes. I didn't need it to be. A source with verified documentation, the article said. That night, Vera posted a photo of Zinnia as a baby, barefoot in the backyard, curls wild, frosting on her cheeks. The caption read, I raised my daughters with love. I never thought one would turn on family for attention. The comments split instantly. Some people rushed to her defense. You deserve better. She should be ashamed. Others weren't as kind. Why didn't you name the other daughter? Silence isn't innocence. One simply said, tell the whole story, Vera. I scrolled through the reactions without flinching, then whispered to no one in particular. Funny how truth sounds like betrayal when all you've known is control. The family group chat, dead silent. By the weekend, the foundation's website had gone down for maintenance. The church board issued a brief statement removing Vera from her advisory role, pending further review. Zinnia took down her podcast episodes. Her Instagram page vanished entirely. I didn't gloat. I lit a candle, poured a cup of tea, and opened my journal. You don't have to set the fire, I wrote. Just pull away your hand and let their match burn them. Around 9:15 p.m., there was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, especially not after the week we'd all had. I opened it to find Leland standing there, alone, no coat, no umbrella, just a man holding a folder, like it weighed more than it should. His face didn't carry anger, it carried something worse, regret. You need to see what your mother filed behind your back, he said, voice low. I stepped aside, let him in, and locked the door behind us. I opened the folder, not knowing if what I'd read would free me or finish me. The folder was heavier than it looked, not physically, of course, just in what it contained. Leland had left it on my kitchen counter 2 nights ago without a word beyond, you need to see this. I hadn't opened it right away. I wasn't ready to see what else my mother had been willing to put on paper. But that morning, with the sky still gray and the air thick with quiet, I made tea, sat at the table, and opened the manila tab. The first document was a formal filing with the Oregon Charitable Registry, dated 6 months ago. It listed Vera as the sole authority of the Thomas Family Foundation. My name didn't appear once. The second page hit harder. An affidavit, signed and notarized, sworn under oath that I, Mariska Thomas, had voluntarily withdrawn from all ongoing family efforts due to a pattern of emotional volatility and unreliability. There was even a line that said I had requested minimal contact for the sake of stability. I hadn't written a word of it. And yet, there it was, in black ink, with a signature eerily close to mine. Someone had taken the time to mimic my pen strokes, forge my consent, and lock me out of the family name. The final document in the stack was a revised version of the Foundation's bylaws. It included new language that removed all voting and financial rights from any individual who demonstrates public hostility toward the Foundation's mission. I didn't need a degree in law to understand that clause was built for me. I sat still, gripping the edge of the table. Flashbacks came in flashes, my 29th birthday when they all forgot, the Christmas gift I mailed that was never acknowledged, the voicemail I left after Dad's fall that went unanswered for 3 days. I had always told myself it was just who they were. Busy. Preoccupied. But this was strategic. This was betrayal codified in paperwork. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I sank slowly to the kitchen floor, sat cross-legged beside the dishwasher, and let the silence sit beside me like an old friend. It wasn't a misunderstanding, I whispered to the air. It was a strategic erasure. I must have sat there for almost 20 minutes before Noli came in from the living room. She didn't say anything at first, just looked at me sitting there on the floor, the papers scattered in front of me like spilled groceries. Then she sat beside me and leaned against my arm. "Mom," she said, "how come Grandma never posts pictures of me like she does with Romy?" My throat tightened. She always shares stuff about Romy's school, her drawings, even her soccer team. But I made that science project, remember? And she said she'd post it, but she didn't. I looked at her, my child, the one who had watched this whole thing unfold without knowing the vocabulary for it. I couldn't lie. "Because some people," I said carefully, "only see what they want to love." She didn't ask anything else. She just leaned a little harder against me, and that was enough. We sat like that side by side, two people learning what it feels like to be left out on purpose. Eventually, I got up, not with drama, but with a different kind of energy. I gathered the documents, scanned every page, and created a new folder on my desktop. Legal, Vera. I forwarded a summary to Ava. Short note, just said, "Here's the next round." Then I opened my messages, scrolled to the family group chat, and hit delete thread. No ceremony, no warning. "You don't grieve people who leave," I wrote in my journal later. "You grieve the version of them you thought existed." That night, as I was brushing my teeth, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Message. "You're about to regret this. We all are." I stared at it for a long moment, then typed back. "Then regret it on your own time." 3 weeks after the article dropped, the noise finally began to fade. Not disappear, just fade, like a faucet slowly turned off, but still dripping. I was sipping tea when Ava called. I recognized the tone before the words. "They're in it now," she said. "Full review. The City Grant Committee wants itemized expenses, all of them." I didn't even smile. I just exhaled, long and steady. "You don't need to yell to be heard," I told her. "Sometimes you just need to file the right form." I clicked off the call and opened my laptop. A quick scroll through my alerts showed that Vera had been removed from the Women's Historical Fund Board. No fanfare, just a quiet, effective immediately on their site. Zinnia, meanwhile, got hit from the side. A well-known donor posted publicly that their logo had been used in the Foundation's latest brochure without permission. The cease and desist letter was posted too, full of legal phrasing and one very American sentiment: "We don't tolerate deception packaged as outreach." The Foundation's website went dark 2 days later. "Technical issues," they claimed. I didn't post. I didn't share. I didn't even like the comments flooding under the news coverage. Instead, I updated my password manager, secured every digital asset under my name, and filed the final paperwork for my nonprofit. It would be called Table Reclaimed. A quiet nod to everything I'd been denied, and everything I would now define on my own terms. The week that followed was quieter, and strangely kind. A few old colleagues messaged me privately. I didn't know. I should have asked. "I'm sorry." I answered all of them the same way. "You weren't supposed to know." That's the point of a good performance. On Saturday, I met with my team to plan the first public event for Table Reclaimed, a scholarship brunch named in honor of my grandmother. Not Vera, never Vera, but my mother's mother, who once told me in the middle of a school talent show, "Don't wait for applause, take the mic." I was finally ready to do that. The new office space was tucked between an old record store and a plant nursery. It wasn't flashy, just clean, simple, and mine. The lease was in my name. The EIN number linked to my own bank account. No shadows, no signatures borrowed behind my back. I walked through the room slowly, keys in one hand, light switches flicked on and off like affirmations. This was mine. That evening, as I was locking up, I found a small envelope in the mailbox outside the office door. No return address. The handwriting, familiar. Inside was a single card. Blank. Except for one line. I hope you're proud of what you've done. No signature. But I didn't need one. I stood on the front step with the card in my hand, then tucked it into my bag without pause. I whispered, I am. The voicemail was 33 seconds long. No greeting, no apology, just Vera's voice, measured, brittle. I don't recognize the daughter you've become. Click. I didn't delete it. I didn't even replay it. I saved it, labeled it unplayed truths, and moved on. That's the thing with wounds that never close. You stop poking them just to prove they still hurt. I stood by the window, watching soft spring light break through the gray. The camellias had bloomed early this year. They always reminded me of my grandmother's garden, lush, bright, unapologetically beautiful, the kind of beauty that never asked for permission to take up space. Maybe I had become someone Vera couldn't control. Maybe that was the point. Days passed. No new Facebook posts. Zinnia's page remained blank. No family emails, no updates, not even the passive-aggressive, hope everyone's doing well. Group texts Vera used to send every time she wanted to remind us who still held the mailing list. One morning over cereal, Noelle looked up from her tablet and asked, "Did Grandma block us?" I thought about lying, thought about saying it was a glitch or that Grandma was just busy. But my daughter was 10. She deserved more than another adult rewriting silence into kindness. "No," I said softly. "She just doesn't know how to love out loud." Noelle didn't ask anything else. She just went back to her cereal. That afternoon, Leland came by again. No warning, no pretense, just knocked on the door and stood there, holding a small bouquet of daffodils wrapped in a grocery receipt. He didn't say much when I opened the door, just, "For Noelle," and handed me the flowers. We sat at the kitchen table. No tea, no excuses, just the hum of the fridge and two people trying to speak in a language we never practiced. "I should have stood up when it mattered," he finally said. I didn't say, "It's okay." I said, "Then stand up now." "Start with her." He nodded, and for once, it didn't feel like a promise made to escape guilt. It felt like intent. The next morning, Noelle came back from school to find a bouquet on her desk, a card tucked inside. "Proud of you, always. Grandpa." She didn't cry. She just smiled and said, "He's trying." That weekend, I walked into the planning meeting for the Table Reclaimed launch. Our small rented office space was crowded with volunteers, donors, and people who'd shown up not because they had to, but because they believed in what we were building. On the wall, printed in bold above our welcome desk, was a quote pulled from one of my old journals. "You don't need their table, you can build your own." And we were. At the end of the meeting, as we cleaned up, someone handed me an envelope. No name, no return address, just the faint scent of my sister's perfume on the paper. Subject line, "I didn't know." Not all of it. One line inside, "If you're willing, I want to talk." I stared at it for a long moment. Then I hit archive. Closure doesn't always come with conversation. Sometimes it's just a decision. The sun rose without ceremony, soft and golden against the early summer haze. I stood in the mirror fastening the clasp of a necklace Noelle had picked out for me. Simple, silver, strong. This was not the kind of morning my mother would have planned. No floral arch, no staged photo op, no embroidered napkins. But the parking lot was full. By 9:45 a.m., every seat in the community room was taken. Volunteers bustled quietly, arranging welcome folders and pouring coffee. I walked through the front entrance slowly, deliberately. And there it was, mounted above the main doors in brushed steel. The Thomas Initiative for Integrity. Not a nod to Vera. not a gesture toward legacy. Just a statement of what we were choosing to build from here on out. After the ribbon cutting, we moved to the lounge for a short Q+A. I answered questions, shook hands, thanked the people who had showed up not because of guilt or optics, but because they believed in action. Then Ava pulled me aside. "We caught something," she said, opening her tablet. Apparently, Vera had filed paperwork for a second foundation, using my name again. This one aimed to reroute the remaining funds from the family account into a shell entity she quietly registered 3 weeks ago. "It didn't go through," Ava added. "Your fraud alert froze the transfer before it hit." My mother, in all her orchestration, had once again tried to use me to fund her reputation. This time, it failed. I went home that afternoon and drafted a letter, not on cardstock, not with a handwritten note, but typed, legally reviewed, signed in bold. To whom it may concern, I, Mariska Thomas, formally withdraw all associations, past and future, from the Thomas Family Foundation and any of its affiliates. I disavow all legacy claims, personal or professional. I revoke the use of my likeness, name, signature, and narrative from any material connected to the foundation or the Thomas family. The final line, "You erased me from your world. I'm building one where I'm the author." The next few weeks moved fast. News outlets picked up the audit fallout. Vera's public role was stripped. Zinnia lost her spot on a national brand board after screenshots of the podcast matched time-stamped donation fraud reports. The church, quiet for so long, removed our family brick from the donor wall. When asked for comment, Vera told a reporter, "My daughter has destroyed everything." I didn't flinch. I replied once, through a short statement, "I didn't destroy it. I just stopped funding the illusion." 3 days later, I stood in front of a room full of women, mothers, caretakers, former shadows of their former selves. It was the first workshop under our rebranded nonprofit, the Reclamation Project. Noelle sat in the front row with a sign in her lap that read, in bold marker, "You showed up for you and for me." I ended the session with one sentence. "You don't owe the people who broke you a front row to your healing." The applause wasn't thunderous, but it didn't need to be. After everyone left, I stayed behind, locked the office door, turned off the lights, and stood for a moment in the quiet. My name glowed faintly on the wall, etched into glass, not paper. Permanent, earned. This time, my name wasn't printed at the bottom of the program. It was etched in the foundation.